Thanks everybody for joining us here today. This is really a very special and meaningful announcement that we all have today that's going to impact a lot of our residents. I want to start by recognizing and thanking a number of people today. First, I want to thank Congressman Joe Morelli, who's standing behind me here, who you're going to hear from. Congressman Morelli was instrumental in bringing together the group of people today and facilitating the work that was done to make today possible, and I want to thank Congressman Morelli for that. I want to thank Dr. Brenda Buck. Thank you, Dr. Buck, from the Animal Hospital of Rochester, as well as Dr. Marion and Dr. Ingersoll. Congressman Morelli and his team had brought together this team of veterinarians and members of the Monroe County government and representatives from Comida to develop a plan to secure funding for this new center that we're standing in here today. Our county team, which is led by Anna List, the Monroe County Director of Planning and Development. Is Anna here today? I don't know if she's here today, but I want to thank Anna List, our partners who actively supported this project, including Miriam Steinberg from Lollipop Farm, Mayor Evans and Commissioner Shirley Green from the City of Rochester's Department of Recreation and Human Services, and of course Comida, who saw the value in this project and provided critical funding needed to make this project a reality. And I want to thank our board chair, Ann Burr, and all the Comida board members for their help. I also want to thank BJ Scanlon from my team as well, who was very helpful in bringing the parties together and thinking creatively about how we can help to fund this service and help to bring this service to residents here in our community. This investment in a new emergency veterinarian center in Rochester will help address a crisis that was created by the recent closure of the only overnight animal hospital in the greater Rochester region. The Rochester Emergency Veterinarian Services will open its overnight animal hospital in January of 2024. Yesterday, the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency, Comida, approved $100,000 in programmatic assistance for the clinic, which will go towards the purchase of equipment that was necessary to open this facility. The closure last month of the region's only overnight animal hospital left our community without emergency care for vets. This is devastating, and many of us have horror stories of families with sick pets, having to put them in a car. You have to drive to Buffalo, you have to drive to Syracuse, you have to come back. It's unneeded stress, and it potentially endangers their pets. And we know how much we care about our pets. Myself, Blue and Finn are both the recipients of our own family. Blue and Finn are both the recipients of emergency services themselves. They would not still be members of the Bello family if it weren't for emergency veterinary services. And these are members of your family. And so when our pets need help, it's important that our residents here have access to quality care, whether it's day or night or if it's in the weekends. They have to have quality care right here in our community. So this investment will help address the critical gap in emergency care for animals, and it's going to improve the quality of life for pets and the families who love them. These services play a crucial role also in preventing unnecessary distress and saving lives of our beloved animals. Quick access to emergency veterinary care reassures families that they'll have a place to turn to when emergencies arise. This is also a quality of life issue for our residents as well. As we're looking to build our economy, we're looking to attract workers, the next generation of workforce. We're looking to keep people here. This is a quality of life issue too. When people are looking about where they want to raise their family and where they're going to have a good quality of life, access something as simple as veterinary services for your pets and your animals is critical to that, to the success of that. The other critical note here is that the investment is going to play an important role in workforce development. The launch of this facility will help our region retain its veterinary staff. It's going to work to educate, train, and build our future veterinary service workforce. And in fact, the opening of the Reb Center here will create 20 new jobs for veterinarians, licensed veterinary technicians, and other support staff. So there are future possibilities to continue expanding the workforce here to address shortages in staff through partnerships with veterinary schools and veterinary technician programs. So again, this is about providing services for the here and now for members of our family, our beloved pets. It's a quality of life issue. It's also a workforce issue, helping training and put people to work in a field that helps all of us here in our families. So again, I can't be grateful, express enough gratitude to this team for coming together, thinking creatively about how to solve this problem here in Rochester. I can't thank the Comida Board enough for their $100,000 investment here to help get this off the ground, and really all the teams that came together. And one of the ways that things like this, especially when they're complicated, it involves workforce, it's equipment, it's workforce, it's locations, it's people, it's a lot of different things are involved here. There's regulations and everything else. You have to have someone to step forward, facilitate the conversation, identify the problem, identify people who can solve the problem, and really help drive the conversation and bring people together. Congressman Joe Morelli did that. It's because of Congressman Morelli that we're standing here today, because he was able to bring all these partners together, help think creatively about how to solve and impact this problem. And here we are today announcing a really incredible a solution here. So Joe, I want to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of our families, our furry friends that are home, and all really the pets' lives are going to be saved because of this facility here and the hard work of the doctors and the technicians and the people that you see standing here behind me. So I want to introduce Congressman Joe Morelli.
Thanks. Good morning. First of all, to the county executive, I am incredibly blessed to have such a great partner and someone who cares deeply about this community. And I do want to tell the story, and I want to thank certainly Doctors Buck, Ingersoll, and Marion. I was walking outside my door a couple of months ago, just after the announcement of the closure of a site, and my neighbor, who walks her dog Havala several times a day, stopped me and said, "Can you please do something about this? It's really an emergency." And we started talking on my team, and I want to acknowledge Marissa Kaiser on my team, who did such great work and worked with our doctors. And so we went back and said, what can we do about this? Clearly, most people wouldn't necessarily think of the federal government or a member of Congress as being able to sort of be involved in this. But what you realize is the most important things we do really relate back to our local communities and relate to the people and the families who live here, whether or not it's a federal issue, a state issue, a county issue. We need to come together. And so we began talking, and I really do, along with the county executive, want to thank Doctors Buck, Ingersoll, and Marion, because they were part initially of a Zoom conversation I had with them where, veterinarians are overworked, their staffs are overworked. And I can tell you this, and I'm sure the county executive will agree with me, when we knock on doors, as we do throughout the year, to visit residents, you get the sense of how many pets there are in this community. It seems like every house has at least one dog, many times two or three, cats and other pets. And these are members of families. I mean, when people talk about the loss of a pet, my mom just lost her pet Jingles not too long ago. It's devastating. So whether it's a family member with young children who grow up with a pet, or it's a senior citizen who may have that pet as their only companion, these are truly, truly life-altering and devastating circumstances when a pet becomes really ill. And it becomes ill at a time when the veterinarian's office isn't open. You look for 24-hour emergency the same way that people do when they have challenges and go to emergency rooms. So we began the conversation, and these three vets and others stepped forward to talk about how they might come together and build an opportunity for people to have their pets seen after hours. And we've also consulted with the mayor, and I know that they have many interests in the city of Rochester. Hopefully we'll hear more about that as well. And I remember calling the county executive and saying, I know you might find this at least laughable, but I've been thinking a lot about the animal closure, the hospital, the 24-hour service in Monroe County, and we had great conversations with our vets. And at the same time, I think the county executive had been having parallel conversations with many of the same folks. And these three stepped forward, and I'm incredibly grateful to them because, as the county executive has said, these are really sort of the things that help make a community what we want it to be, the best of a community. And so here we are at the holidays, Christmas, to be able to announce this great opportunity. I'm so grateful to the county executive and the Industrial Development Authority, which has approved this funding. There's a lot more work to do. I think when we hear from our veterinarian friends, they're going to tell everyone how difficult this is. I mean, the practice of veterinarian medicine is getting harder and harder because there's more and more people with pets, and there's fewer and fewer veterinarians. The hours are long. They really take, I'd say that they take their problems home with them, but I'm not sure they get home very often because they're dealing with their patients. But in a crisis, I mean, there's nothing more important to people than being able to have somewhere to turn. And so I'm really grateful to the county executive and the Comida, as well as our friends here who have really pulled this together. So I'm grateful. Hopefully the community will embrace this. There's a lot more work to do, but this is really a feel-good story at a time when God knows we could use feel-good stories all over America, and this is a great one for Rochester. So without further ado, I think I'm going to introduce, is it Dr. Ingersoll? Have you been nominated here? He was out of the room. He was out of the room when they chose him to speak on their behalf, but I am very grateful to all of our vets here this morning for all the work they do. And without further ado, Dr. Bruce Ingersoll.
So I don't really have anything prepared because I was notified this morning that I got to speak. But it is simply overwhelming to have this kind of support from Congressman Morelli and Executive Bello. This was not anything we ever expected, and it just goes to show how in tune with their community and how important our mission is in this community. And so a while ago, we decided that we were going to build from the ground up an emergency facility, and we designed it as a nonprofit so that it will be able to give back to the community in doing that. And as we started down this path, we were really worried about funding, and it was just heartwarming to have so many community members reach out and then have our government officials reach out to us to figure out how they could help. We did not go to them, and so it was very just sort of crazy to have that happen. I've never been part of something like that. So, and as they alluded, there's been lots of problems in veterinary medicine. There's overpopulation of pets. Our pet population exploded during COVID at a time when veterinarians decided to retire, and we have no additional veterinarians coming out. Their schools are limited in how many vets they can produce every year. There's hope on the horizon, but until then, we're going to try and patch the gaps, and especially for our underserved Rochester community. So, again, I can't thank everyone enough, and I'll turn it back over to Executive Bello for questions and answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ingersoll. And again, I'll just close by saying, by thanking all the partners here today. This is really a wonderful and true example of a public-private partnership to solve a critical problem that this community has faced over the last several months that came to a surprise as many pet owners, but obviously it's a concern to a lot of people who live here, including my own family. And so, you know, we have a lot of pet owners. Congressman Morelli said it right. You know, when the closure of the 24/7 emergency vet a location was announced that it was closing, that set off a lot of fear and panic throughout the community. These doctors here who you see here really stepped up, thought creatively about how to solve this problem in our community. And we're also thinking about long-term, too, then, as a place that can help develop that next generation, too, of veterinarians and technicians and make this a more sustainable industry here in service in our community. And again, I want to thank the Comida board here at Monroe County for stepping up and providing some funding for this as well to help get it off the ground, and the community who stepped forward to donate. It's a nonprofit, right? So, and creating that model here, not-for-profit, creating that model here, I think is a good sustainable model as well. So with that, I think anybody up here can take any questions the media might have. That's what I figured. Yeah.
And I realize you may not have answers. My colleague Beth Adams, so she five minutes some of these. Do you have an opening date, and B, I would say, what days or hours do you think will be open at this point?
So the plan is to be open February 1st, starting at 7 p.m. Our receiving hours that we will actually be taking in emergencies, are going to be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 7 p.m. all the way through 7 a.m. Monday, so the full weekend. Pets will not have to leave the hospital from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Dr. Buck and some other veterinarians are going to watch in-hospital patients, but we won't be receiving new emergencies during that time, since that's a time when your day practitioners will be open, and the urgent cares who have tried to sort of, fill the gap as well will be open to take those. We just don't have the staff and will not have the staff by February 1st.
Speaking of staff, I know three of you I've seen mentioned that we've interviewed, but do you have a certain number of vets you're starting with, or just you three? Or?
So we're, in all honesty, we're cobbling together 4 full-time equivalent veterinarians. I have about 7 or 8 people already committed to shifts to do that. I will be doing shifts. These two, and Dr. Buck, will be. She'll be doing some of the day shifts to monitor the patients as well.
Is there anything that the community can do? And it just moved just a little.
Sorry.
That's okay. The community can do as far as helping you. I mean, do you need volunteers? What are you going to need from the community to do?
So early on, we still need more startup money. So donations, rockemergencyvet.com. There's a Give Butter link there. And then from the community, we are developing that volunteer aspect. It's going to be a few months down the road. Unfortunately, we're trying to get the hospital open first, and then we're going to develop programs that volunteers can help us with potentially, working in the facility, not working with animals, but helping do the behind the scenes things for us.
Such as?
Cleaning, potentially doing fundraisers, working on IT stuff, things that normally businesses have to, pay for, et cetera. We're going to want to get the community involvement so that they utilize their skills to maintain, programs for us.
How much of a difference maker is this funding? I know, Dr. Buck, you said you've seen massive support from the community, especially funding-wise as well. So how needed is this? And was it just that much more to get you over the hump, or is this a surplus at this point?
This is definitely not a surplus. We're still going to be short, and we're still going to be running thin, but we can make it. This would definitely, it more than doubled the community donations. I think we're up to about $175,000 including the Comida grant in donations and the grant money. So, which is really still probably about $75,000 under to get started, but it will be able to do it. It just means we're going to have to run short on things for a while, but which is not in a bad way. But, yep, go ahead.
One of the things that we're committed to, and we said to the vets when we were talking about this, we're committed to continue to look for public dollars. So at the federal level, there may be community project funding that may be available. We'll look at the different agencies, USDA and others. But this also points out something we just want to make note of, that our community is not alone. This is really a challenge because there is a shortage of veterinarians. Dr. Ingersoll talked about it. I think there are a number of things that, again, the county executive and I have pledged to work with around trying to resolve that, or at least address the shortage, which will not affect just Monroe County and our community, as important that is to us, but the state and the country. So we're going to continue to work with them to try to find funding. I'm really grateful that they did this as a not-for-profit. We're working with the IRS to get their application in as quickly as possible. And this is really going to be a community asset, and they're really to be congratulated for doing it.
Dr. Ingersoll, one quick question. I know it's probably hard to predict this, but how long do you think it'll take for this new service to meet the needs of the community in terms of emergency veterinary?
Oh, I honestly don't know. We're going to be running with 4 full-time equivalent. VSES had 12 to 15 full-time emergency doctors. So to get to that number, I really expect it to be 2 to 3 years at least. So unfortunately for the community, they're going to have to still exercise a lot of patience with us. We are going to be taking the most critical, the most in-need patients. Some of those patients we may be turning away and saying, you have to go to urgent care tomorrow, or you're going to have to go to one of the other facilities still, but we're going to try and take care of the most needed patients.
Besides just veterinarians, how many total positions need to be filled?
So there's going to be about 30 to 35 total positions with support staff for the 4 full-time veterinarians.
And techs, are you looking for techs?
We're starting our interviews next week for technicians. We've already received a number of resumes for technicians, assistants, CSRs, or client service representatives. But if you're interested, send them in.
So what's going to be the difference between this and VSES? I know the staffing obviously is a lot lower here than what VSES has, but that's kind of how the decline and the decreased hours. How do you plan on keeping this going instead of having to close like they did?
So that's the nonprofit part of it is where we think this is going to allow us to be much more successful. It's going to allow us to not focus on profit so much and focus on using dollars to reinvest in our staff and our community. It's going to allow us to one of the biggest problems for veterinarians and veterinary technicians is their student loans. And so by working for a nonprofit, they can apply for student loan forgiveness. And so we're hoping that that will be a huge attracting feature for the hospital for that. Hopefully we're just, we're going to treat them, and work through the stress of, working in an emergency environment.
Maybe a question for Congressman Morelli, just addressing the topic of non-compete laws, and we've seen that as an issue in the veterinary field. How do you foresee that process going? Is there any push at the Washington level? Anything you can address?
Well, it's a really good question because the first thing I did when we started talking about this in the office, I called the company that was leaving that you just referenced and said, I don't know if there's any non-compete clauses for your vet techs or your veterinarians, but I would like you to make the decision unilaterally so we don't have to get the government involved to withdraw them, and they agreed to do it on the spot. So, and I think it applied primarily to veterinarians. I don't think it was, as it turned out, the vet techs didn't have a non-compete clause. But I think this is a really important issue, particularly when you have organizations like that who left town, so there was no service. So it would be ridiculous for them to have held people accountable under a non-compete clause. But I think we're looking at it. I think the state is doing it. We're looking at them at the federal level right now, whether non-compete clauses make sense. And oftentimes people are forced into them as a term of employment, and you don't have any other option. So we're going to continue to review them to see if they make sense, particularly in the modern world.
I think we have time for one more question.
I know that the other VSES closed and it reduced its hours for almost a year or a year. So what took so long to be able to bring back another 24-hour vet?
Well, look, there's a lot of hard work went into this, honestly. When we had the first conversations, I think because they're so, their practices are really full already. I'm not sure. I don't want to say they weren't enthusiastic about this, but I think they were just contemplating whether or not this was even possible. And then we had to get the funding. So it took a lot. But I think when they announced the closure, that's when it really galvanized people. It certainly, as I said, in addition to my neighbor, we had already been talking about, well, what do we do? How do we pull people together? And I think the great thing about the partnership with the county executive and myself and the mayor is we can pick up the phone and say, let's at least think about how to address some problems, and how, even if it's not something that's in, necessarily a federal issue or a county issue or state issue, because oftentimes they feel like they're sort of in one lane or another. It's like, let's put all that aside. We'll figure it out. If you have a willingness to work together, and the county executive and I have a great relationship, we just said, how do we solve this problem and get to a place where hopefully we're all going to do this as a community. This will be a sustainable operation going forward. So 10 years from now, people will be saying, remember that day when those guys came together, those doctors, and were willing to do this and take a leap of faith. They're laughing, but this is going to be, when they retire and pass it on to the next set of veterinarians, we're going to be thinking about how this community came together and really worked hard to just solve a problem. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.